Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Leadership Heart Podcast with Sandra J. Horton, the Growth Catalyst. Hello, everyone. It is a wonderful Thursday here on the Pacific Coast in British Columbia in Canada. My name is Sandra Horton, and I am coming live with the Leadership Heart Podcast. And today I am so excited that we have this opportunity to have someone who is local in our beautiful community, who is serving with just such a beautiful heart. And I'm so excited to be able to share that we have a beautiful Jane St. Clair. I'm going to give you a little bit of knowledge about this wonderful woman and what she does. She is the founder of Wiseheart Counselling. Can you not absolutely know that we are so heart-centered together? So this conversation is going to be amazing. And she provides a down-to-earth counseling support so you can heal, grow, and feel better. She is a registered therapeutic counselor with the Association of Cooperative Counselling Therapists of Canada. So without any further ado, I am going to bring in, there she is. Hello, Jane. Thank you for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me. Hello, everyone.
And, you know, this is a special opportunity for us because I know that you have located yourself in this beautiful, wonderful spot. And I'm wondering if you could share with us who are actually live. You won't be able to see it when you're listening to the audio, but please do share for those who are live. Look at this beautiful place. Breathing in. So Jane, where are you at?
Well, I am very blessed today to be, I'm actually at my parents' house, and they live in Sandy Point, Washington, so just outside of Ferndale. So I'm just down visiting for the evening, and it is a lovely place. It's just very peaceful.
I love it. And it's really setting us up for this wonderful opportunity to really get to know you and really share your journey, what you're doing. How did you get to where you are? Focusing around those lovely 3 L's of conscious leadership, which is to learn, to live, and to lead. So why don't we begin at the beautiful beginning stages, you know, Jane, and thank you for your openness as well. When we shared on our social media, I mean, you've had a really empowered and impactful life and having to go through a lot of things to get to where you are today. Do you have any kind of tips and strategies for those when you're starting to learn about yourself? How have you been able to, you know, what did you do to begin that learning phase about yourself?
Oh, good question. And I love the first 2 L's. So learn and live, learn to live. I think sometimes we start our lives off hurting a little after some difficult experiences. And so we spend a lot of time, I think, or I certainly did, looking outside for you know, for help or for a way to feel better or more authentic or, you know, that sort of thing, when actually, you know, what I really needed to do was connect with myself. But my personal journey took me all the way across Canada and then to the UK, where I lived for a while. And I just kept moving around thinking, you know, I got to find that destination where, you know, everything's going to click.
Yeah.
When in actual fact, you know, that just doesn't work.
It is interesting, isn't it? It's like we have this beautiful opportunity in our lives just to have that moment of reflection and stopping to say, wow, where have I been? Like all these different points have been for a purpose. And I have found that one of the greatest keys for me being able to go within to then change without is really acknowledging the place, and in particular, as you know, as a counselor, the healing place of acceptance that these journeys, these experiences are learning. So how did you make that shift to being able to accept that these are learning, not that they were done to you?
Oh gosh, what a good question. It was a process. It was sort of like layers peeling off and little bits of acceptance over time. Different, let's see, counseling helped a lot.
Yeah.
talking to a lot of different people, different sort of more spiritual types of coaches, um, coming back home and actually, having the time to slow down. I think all of those things played a part in it. But just the sheer act of like working on acceptance, we're all this blend of light and dark, and we have to accept our light and our shadow, and so just really learning that, oh, those things that I maybe thought were, shameful or embarrassing or whatever are just, part of being human, part of being me. And so really actually doing quite a bit of active work on that too was also really helpful.
I think that's huge. And I thank you for bringing up those words because for many individuals, and I can speak only my truth because from my lens, the whole shame or the blame, it wasn't at all times easy for me to kind of understand those pieces. And when I was able to shift my mindset to realize that I had to accept myself first. I had to go in and give love to myself, to
Mm,
heal myself, right? In that journey. So when you're working with your clients, with with those individuals that are perhaps in that state of becoming, that they're really starting to dig into that those onion pieces, or pulling back those wonderful onions. What suggestions or strategies do you like to use, or do you work with for your clients to be able to say, okay, that makes sense to me, here's my first step, here's my second step, or some combination?
okay, yeah, great question. I think a couple of really key pieces are number one, slowing your nervous system down or regulating yourself, which can be done through breath work or exercise or any number of different things, meditating. But I think one of the key first steps is starting to tap into, what are you thinking? What is the quality of your thoughts? Are you a harsh self-critic? I've found if you're a harsh self-critic, which many of us are, it's very hard to feel good. If you're not
Mhm.
your own biggest cheerleader, this is a difficult life, this human experience. And if we are also,
Yep.
like adding weight
Hurting
to
ourselves.
ourselves,
Yeah.
hurting ourselves, and some people are quite unpleasantly surprised by how harsh they are to themselves.
Mhm.
So that is a step early on in my practice with almost everybody. The kind of technical term is metacognition. So
Mhm.
thinking about your thoughts, and you start just by observing them. And so what we don't want to do is we don't want to then start judging ourselves for our thoughts, right? Because then we're just
Yeah.
perpetuating that cycle or that problem. We just want to start noticing, like, oh, I just judged myself, or I just judged somebody else. It's
Right.
just noticing and maybe just labeling instead of then, keeping that cycle going, like, oh, Jane, you're so harsh on yourself, or, you know,
It's like a pattern that ruminates, that keeps going back and forth, back and forth. It's almost like you have to have a what we call, like, in I'm doing my NLP training in the practitioner world with Rex Sykes, who I admire so much.
Mm,
He's teaching us on the pattern interrupts to be able to break those cycles. So if something does come into our consciousness, out actually we're actually thinking it, to be able to stop, reframe, and look and do something different, so that
mhm.
we're doing something to actually stop that. So
Amazing.
so now that we're kind of talking about that, how, like, in that healing process,
Mhm.
is there anything, like what I found in my journey of healing is, what Kubler-Ross talks about, the natural, from, kind of denial, you kind of,
Mhm.
all those beautiful stages of the grieving process.
Mhm.
How can you help people understand that there is actually a grieving process through this as well? You're letting go of some things, you're stopping some things, and reimagining a new way forward. So, what are your
Mhm.
thoughts on that?
Ooh, that's a challenging one, and I love it. So a great example would be if you did not have a good relationship with, say, a primary attachment figure. Like, let's say it's your mom, and that is, undeniably a very critical relationship.
Yeah.
So if you grew up without that, or if it was hindered by, their own pain that they've carried through the generations, or substance use issues, or just absence, they're not there physically for
Yeah.
whatever reason, that is a huge loss.
Yeah.
And that does warrant a grieving process.
Mhm.
And sometimes we're just mad, we're upset, we're hurt, and we don't quite think of it as a grief. Where
Mm.
if you think that in an ideal attachment scenario, you would have a good, nurturing type of relationship, and it just has inherent benefits. So if you don't have that, it's something to grieve.
Yeah.
And that's where, sometimes a counselor or a coach can point out, oh, have you grieved that loss or that pain?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I just think that's a wonderful question, and it's
Mhm.
important. And I think a lot of people haven't thought about it in that light. Because
Yeah, because 'cause we're going through that purpose, aren't we? Like, our journey has these very impactful places, and the reason I'm bringing this up too, Jane, is that in our personal leadership, it shows up. And what I see happening to many people, that whether, I'm coaching them or I'm seeing others, just living their life in their own terms, is that they are very reactionary. Like, it shows up in work. They're very much exerting. Again, there's some bias in how I look at things, and I love to get your lens on this. Is, we see it in the workplace with the hostility, the overreactions, kind of that, the emotions running people. So,
Mhm,
how do you counsel, or how do you support individuals to kind of tap into that? Because you're an amazing expert at these areas. So, what do you say? How do we support people who are coming in our lives that are very emotional, overreactive, they're hostile, maybe they haven't dealt with some of their things in their lives? Any ideas on how to support for ourselves and for others?
Oh, wow. Your questions are so amazing and so thought-provoking. Okay, so there's a few things that could
Mhm.
be coming into play. One would be psychodynamics, like, and I'm not an expert, but, you know, like, how do I explain? So maybe reenacting a wound from your childhood, for instance,
Mhm.
and somebody is sort of channeling a certain energy that, reminds you of your mom or dad, or, whatever it happens to be.
Yes.
But more
Mhm.
likely, that might have just been a person that was raised in a hostile environment where having a dialogue is not, they don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
They don't know how to be vulnerable, perhaps. They might look at vulnerability as a weakness.
Mhm.
So the thought or the risk of being wrong is viscerally painful. So it comes out as, there's a wall up. I'm not going to risk vulnerability. I'm going to, show you, tell you who's who, kind of thing, or what's what. And then I think the other thing, so maybe a means of dealing with that. I love the Viktor Frankl quote. He
Mm.
said, between the stimulus and response is a space, and in
Mm.
that space is where all the power lies. Like, we have that. I sort of paraphrased the quote a little, but
No, I love it. I love it. And, Jane, it is that holding the space. So really understanding our own presence. So I'll go
Mhm,
back to vulnerability in just a second, but what we're really speaking about is being more present for ourselves. And
mhm,
presence is having something greater than just ourselves in that moment. So that's how
mhm,
I look at it. So
mhm,
in those moments of being present, because again, we're learning about ourselves, perhaps we're learning about others. Now we're wanting to live with this is where we're kind of shifting to that kind of living space, right? So we're
mhm,
just talking about, if we have these relationships, it may not be as fully ideal, whether it's personally or professionally. We're starting to see, maybe some people aren't feeling comfortable, they're not doing so well in our own eyes. This
mhm,
is what we're talking about. It's like, how do we build the present moment to be able to really look at these individuals, and how do we help them because in your great work, that's what you do, is to support them. So how have you been successful in this living space? Are there any great tips and strategies that you have to help people live in their present moment so that they can respond in a way to others if they're not so much doing well, but we can do well?
Yeah, for sure. And sometimes modeling it helps others as well. I would say the biggest thing, and it's not, it's complicated and it takes work, but it's not rocket science. Um, we start to notice what's happening in our bodies. So when I was a single mom, I'm still a single mom, but when my boys were young, I found it very, very difficult to parent them without being reactive. And so what I simply started to do is I started to take a time out. I was like, Mom's got to go because I'm going to yell at you in a minute.
Yeah.
Nothing good
There.
is
Who
going to
hasn't
come from
been there? Hello.
that. Right? And so it's just noticing, oh, I've got that. I can't think. I've got that knot in my gut. And in a minute, I'm going to blow.
Yeah.
And that happens in the workplace all the time. Like, I have no poker face. So when I'm upset or when something emotionally triggering happens, my face goes beet red. I don't breathe. I hold my breath. And there's so many signs that something is amiss. So I think the first step and a way to increase the space between, so there's always, we're being stimulated all day. We're responding or reacting, one or the other. And reacting doesn't have any thought behind it. It's just, we want to start responding. So we need to stretch that space in the middle a little bit. So noticing, and it sounds so, it's not, I'm not trying to oversimplify, noticing what's going on. Like when Sarah cuts me off in a meeting, I start to feel like I'm going to lose my mind. I'm going to rage in a minute. So I notice, oh, okay, I need to take a break. Is that something I need to address? Do I need to have a conversation? If I can, but if not, there's a lot of things beyond our control. So how do we nurture ourselves? How do we soothe our nervous system so that we're not always going off? Driving in traffic used to really get me. And actually it was my meditation practice that solved that problem. People are people. People have so much going on. They're cutting in and out of traffic. I see people on their computers, not just their phones, but like, are putting on their makeup, shaving, whatever. There's so many things going on we can't control. So we really just have to kind of tap into like, what do I need to be able to endure all of the stimuli going on around me without popping off all the time? Like that's really exhausting.
And these are all wonderful suggestions, and I thank you. They're great for those who haven't perhaps thought about those areas, and some strategies to really, make the choice today to try. Like, why not just do it, right? And one of the things that I found really interesting, and I love to share also my personal journey with this, in particularly with emotional intelligence. As an EQI practitioner, one of the things that I found is getting intelligence over our emotions, knowing, like what you were saying, where do they come from? How are they starting to show up in my body? And as a professional in your practice, this must be quite a moment of aha for some people, because I lived 34 years numb, just more in my head, not really connected to this little lovely body part.
I know.
And that's that integration piece. So how do you know, or what are the signs that you get to kind of see in your practice or even in your personal life where you felt, okay, this is how I'm integrating today. I feel grounded. I feel rest assured. I'm feeling peaceful. And then now what? Now what's the next step? So we're starting to live this way. We're starting to really work. How do we tackle our mind, but then connect it to our heart?
Oh boy. Well, yes, I love the way you kind of broke that down, like getting this in check. I don't want to say in control. We're just really learning to work with how our emotions ebb and flow, and certain things we shouldn't do when we're in a certain emotional state or what have you. And then the next step, I think that's really important is, okay, I've been on autopilot for 25 years now, or
Mhm.
for myself, it was probably, yeah, it was probably about that, or maybe even 30. What am I doing? What do I value? How do I
Mhm.
align my life with values that I might not even have known that I had? Some of the people that I like reading and learning from call this kind of the second adulthood. So you live
Mhm.
the first chunk of your life with someone else's value system. And it doesn't always suit us. It doesn't feel good, or we've just never really stopped to think about it. So I think one way to connect mind and heart and emotions and actions is to think about your values, clarify them, and then take an inventory. Am I living a life that aligns with my values? If it's yes, you probably feel pretty good day to day. There's still ups and downs, but if you notice that in your like very important column of values, you're not living true to any of them, it just makes sense that you wouldn't feel the greatest. And you
Mhm.
would maybe be questioning, like, why does life feel like this? I mean, it's not all, rainbows and butterflies once you kind of get on this track, but it
Yeah,
does, it feels a lot better.
it
Um,
does. I love
so
that because I remember that, Jane, the moment that I was doing that kind of work, and I think it's so critical. It was like a second aha moment for me. Was acknowledging my unresolved story, for
Mhm,
myself, and I share this all the time when I do these kind of more counseling kind of opportunity. This is not advice. This is just us sharing our beautiful stories and our perspectives on how we look at to learn, live, and lead our own lives, so that we can
mhm,
role model this. And then what we do this in our business as well, is the moment where I made that choice. I said, I'm choosing to live aligned to, openness and kindness and independence, et cetera. And I
mhm.
left my six-figure income.
Wow.
And and I said, that's it. I can no longer choose to live in a belief system that isn't really fully me. And that's when I went out on my quest for, and with support of my family, because they went right with me
Aw,
on that journey,
amazing.
to really be of service, to
Mhm,
be that, coach consultant, individual. And so it is beautiful. I remember that moment, like, just clicking in those aha moments, and
mhm,
really taking that to the next level. So of all of the points in your journey, where do you land with those aha moments that you'd like to share with us, so we can learn from your journey? And I think that's key, because everyone has a different story, a different way of telling it, and
mhm,
maybe someone else can say, "Oh wow, I've had that situation. Maybe that is that me? Could I? Is there that possibility for hope?" Because you never know where people are at, right?
mhm. Yeah. I think just, that values exercise is a really important one.
Yeah.
A friend asked me that question like 25 years ago, and it was always like knocking around in the back of my brain, but I never really pulled it out and kind of looked at it. And so that was a turning point, even though I didn't realize that it was. But yeah, I mean, we only get one life in this
Mhm.
form, I guess depending on your belief system. But what is most critical to you? And I wanted to point out something about your journey and maybe ask a question for you. So, one of the things that I've really struggled with, and I think it's something that's good to put out on the table and acknowledge, is
Mhm.
even when you get clarity, there's still fear.
Mhm.
It can be very scary. But I love the expression, feel the fear and do it anyway. I mean, fear doesn't disappear just because you suddenly have more clarity. But it's something that we can work with.
Mhm.
And maybe I can just throw a little question back at you. Were you
Yeah,
scared
sure.
when you made that big change? Did you still feel like,
Yeah, it is an interesting reflection when I had that moment of uncertainty, but then this flash of insight came over me, said, I'm doing it irregardless.
I
It's like
love it.
this point of turning in my life. where I really do believe I did some extra work as well with my little girl.
Oh.
And so when I integrated my little girl into my adult self, that's where that integration piece came.
Mm.
And so I couldn't have done that. That fear would have been there because I was reacting as that younger self, Sandy, not the adult woman who
Mhm.
is in control. So when I was able to integrate and discern, the fear changed. It was
Oh.
like, no, this is over there. The second piece for me was understanding, and this is a key piece for so many people, Jane. I love to dive into this too, is the power of reprogramming our subconscious mind.
Mm.
Because you talk about these beliefs. Many people I did not know early on that I thought beliefs were fixed. They're not.
Mm.
We can change this through habits, through consistent and persistent action, right
Mhm.
action with the right positive mindset. We can change these things. So, what are your
Mhm.
thoughts on that? Because I think that's the power of not being a servant to our primitive brain, the
Mhm.
amygdala hijacks within our beautiful emotional center, but actually like making purposeful change. So how have
Mhm.
you been able to do that? I'm going to throw it back to you.
Oh boy. Okay. Well, a lot of listening for those little underlying messages, and sometimes you get a sense of them, and you're like, no, 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 that one that doesn't serve me.
Yeah.
So just again, watching for that to come up, or watching if you're living according to a value that you don't really hold true, or a belief, or those subconscious tapes, or the one of the modalities that I use is called ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. And one
Mhm.
of the things that they do is they suggest, like, you hear these little things, and you notice them, and you're like, no, 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 that's an old message, or that's an old tape, for instance. So acknowledging, like, no, I mean, that may just be playing on repeat, but I don't believe that.
Yeah.
So just, noticing, labeling, and choosing differently. And like you say, with valued action, and, being purposeful. I do believe in positive psychology also.
Mhm. Yes.
I believe in, like, gratitude and looking for things to be grateful for. I listen to certain things as I'm falling asleep that are uplifting,
Mhm.
relaxing, but uplifting. I think it's important to really look at what you're consuming. Are you watching the news all day and then wondering why you're not feeling the greatest?
Mhm.
Are you listening to really doom and gloom? I mean, I know there's a lot of very serious things going on in the world, but what are you feeding yourself with? I think that's a really big part of it, because it reinforces things that we might not believe anymore, or we might not want to live by. But if that's
Yeah.
all that we're taking in, it
Those
just
are
might.
all so powerful, Jane. And I want the viewing audience to ask themselves. This is all about that personal inventory. So whether you're doing a personal inventory on the people you have in your world, how they're showing up, their place, do they support you or not? I do that personal inventory, but this is a personal inventory also with your values and
Mhm.
knowing within you, how do you want to live your life? That's
Mhm.
where this whole, Leadership Heart podcast came from. Because I realized, like you were saying, when you align to your heart, so much more. Your heart always knows. I call
Mhm.
them heart signals. And so when I get a heart signal, it's like, okay, I better stop and listen
I
and
love
then
that.
proceed, right? Like these little
Mhm.
heart signals are in every one of you. So make sure, take stock, take that inventory. And I can't
Mhm.
believe we're already at like 30 minutes already. Like it's just gone like this. So
It
let me
has.
let me just redirect us here because I really want people to know more about you and
Hmm.
about your exceptional services and how they can reach you. And so, anything you want to share in terms of how people can reach you, unique things about your wonderful counseling that you do. Over to you.
Hmm. Thank you. Any unique things? Well, I really am nervous system focused. And I think that's a really big key. Mindfulness, just really being in the present moment to determine what's going on. So that's a little unique thing, I think, although it's becoming a very popular area of focus. Knowing that you can change the reactivity of your nervous system, really important.
Mhm.
I have a physical office in downtown Port Coquitlam, and I also do virtual online counseling for residents of BC. So I guess the best place to find out more is at www.wiseheartcounselling.com. And that's counseling with 2 L's. Or I am on Instagram and Facebook, Wiseheart Counselling BC.
I love that, and I wanted to make sure I always got that in at least once, if not twice, maybe 3 times, because that's the key about this connection, this opportunity today. As we've been exploring how we learn the importance of going within to go without, to be
Mhm.
able to be your authentic self, which Jane talked about as well. Really anchoring in and looking at our values, our beliefs, where we're coming from, and then choosing through mindfulness practices that Jane shared, and also knowing that we are our own creator. We create what we think becomes. Many of our great theorists that we know that we follow, Napoleon Hill and others, have shown that there are opportunities then to follow the greats that came before us. And that's how we get trained and we carry on these things. Then we add a little sprinkle of, our own uniqueness with our beautiful journeys to give that heart-centered approach to leading. And so, Jane, as we kind of wrap around the last closing for leading, do you have any suggestions or strategies for those who are either aspiring to be a leader or are an existing leader or even a seasoned old pro to really be more mindful and to be more present? I think that's a beautiful place to kind of end a little bit, and then I'll wrap it up at the end as well.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, I would say a quick one or a couple of quick things. Number one, a breathing practice is an easy entry point into mindfulness. It changes your physiology. As you're breathing, your heart rate slows down and things like that. It's not a foo-foo, practice.
Mhm.
Or you can add in more spiritual elements if you want, but just simply the breathing. And then the other one that really, I think, sprung to mind as you were talking about leaders is allow yourself to be authentic, and allow the people that work with you and for you to be authentic. Because if they can do that, they are going to be much more energized and bring a much different sort of energy to work,
Mhm.
and to whatever they're doing.
I love that. And the word authentic, authentic leadership, it's such a powerful word,
Mhm.
authentic, because each and every one of us has a different definition of how we show our authenticity, right?
Mhm.
And it really gets into that moral code. It talks to, how do I want to show up? What am I
Mhm.
willing to accept or not accept? And then importantly, which I find interesting with authenticity, is the acceptance of all. And we
Mhm.
talked about acceptance earlier too. I think acceptance is a big word today.
Really big.
Accepting ourselves for who we are and for others. So let's
Mhm.
lean into that before I keep wanting to kind of, there's still some a little bit more I have this feeling that there's another golden nuggets in here. So I'm going to hand it back to you around authenticity.
Okay, I love that. And I'm so glad you did because I heard something recently that really was a mind blower. And it was actually Gabor Mate. And
Oh,
he
yeah.
said, yeah, he's amazing,
Yeah.
from my perspective. But one of the things he said is when we're young, we trade authenticity to maintain our attachment.
Hmm.
So the things that aren't acceptable in our family system, we squish them down. And as we're growing and learning about ourselves, we're kind of letting those things come back up and have more of a place in our lives. And that takes acceptance. It's uncomfortable. I mean, there's things about myself that I used to just be like, oh my God, if people heard me like by huge big laugh, they're gonna think I'm just like, I don't know, like a bumpkin or who knows, whatever it is that we tell ourselves. Um, but that's like just accept, okay, that's me. And also I found that if you find your people, um, sometimes other people accepting you for you helps you accept yourself and be more
Mhm.
authentic. And that is probably equally applicable in leadership, like, people seeing you and seeing your strengths and maybe helping you see them. That is, I think, a big key part of being a leader.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably.
Oh no, that's so beautiful. And you kind of get me going around the parts of us that are hidden, that,
Mm,
whether you use the Johari window, which, allows you to see parts known to yourself, others see that parts are known, things that are known not to both, and those that are really just truly not known. And it's
mhm,
really an interesting exploration, or even through like emotional intelligence and the assessments and things. I find that people have these aha moments like, wait a second, you know, I haven't been expressing because I was so concerned. My mom told me, don't speak up,
mhm,
wait your turn. Like all these things show up in our leadership and how we present ourselves. And
mhm,
it's interesting. These are all things that I've found in my own personal journey, because I can only speak from experience what I've experienced. And
mhm,
I find that's interesting. When I was stepping into my own personal leadership, I
mhm,
had to understand that I had to step into my own leadership.
mhm.
I
Yes.
couldn't just speak it. I had to have done it to, as again, my mentor Rex Sykes says, to be it, do it, and have it. You must be it. I am
Mhm.
it. I
Mm,
think that's part of this beautiful journey. And I always honor the masters in which I'm learned and learning from,
mhm.
as I bring this forward. And I go back to, again, Jane, that emotional intelligence piece is when we're not balanced, it just we don't me perhaps don't see it, and then we have a crisis, and then we have to come, and spend this beautiful time with individuals that are trained like yourself. Um, are there any other ways that people can be alerted so they don't burn out, and have
Ooh.
these moments so they can be authentic, still speak their truth, but not get burned out, so they're still leading in a great way?
Hmm. Oh, good question. Um, I think slow down. Um, Look at how you spend your time. How much time is spent on you for you? Um, that's a big one.
Those are
Um,
big ones. They are, for sure.
yeah, just the simple act of slowing down allows us to be more present. And then we can notice how we're reacting, or if there's something about us we're squashing down. Um, or what is the messaging? I learned a neat little tool recently. So something can happen to you, and it's just a thing, a fact, a thing happened.
Yeah.
And what we ask ourselves is, what is the story I'm making up about this?
Mhm.
Um, because it can be something simple like, I don't know, let's say someone didn't include you in a conversation, but they're just thinking, okay, I'm just being pragmatic, let's quickly get this conversation done. You find out, and the story you're telling yourself is, they don't love me, or I'm a burden, or I'm whatever. um, just slow down and watch what stories you're telling yourself. That's another great one. And I think, particularly for a leader, to really just be aware of the stories that we might be telling ourselves that aren't based on fact. They're more based on our experiences and our beliefs, our subconscious. And also, if we're not sure, to take the time to ask. I got the
Yes.
sense that, you didn't care about me when you didn't bother having, including me in that conversation, or I felt like you think I'm a burden. Can we just talk about that a little bit? Again, sort of, I guess, lean into vulnerability. It sounds like a Brene Brown thing, but of course,
Sure.
there's a reason why we all love her so much. It
Mhm.
takes courage to be vulnerable. And the most vulnerable thing you can do, I think, is just like get with people and ask them,
Yes.
is this what this is what I thought. What did you think? Um,
Yes. I love that. I do use that, and I think it's a very powerful tool. And I'm doing some work now with, a large regional health authority. And it's interesting because they use the work by Gervais
hmm,
Bush, sorry, and clear leadership. And that's exactly kind of, he talks about walking the cube and to reduce interpersonal mush. And in
mhm,
his model, it's an observation, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, and what I want. And it's a
Mm.
powerful model and a powerful tool aligned to what you were just saying. So I really hope that this is adding value to all of you who are out there. We're past the 5 o'clock hour, so I'm going to have to wrap us up, but many wonderful opportunities. So again, Jane, how do people reach you?
www.wiseheartcounselling.com or jane@wiseheartcounselling.com if you want to email, or Facebook and Instagram Wiseheart Counseling BC.
I love it. And all of these beautiful tips and strategies, and these are all learned and valued opportunities for you to be able to shift your perspective, to really learn how to learn about yourself, to then live a life that you truly want, that one that you are directing, that you're informing your beautiful mind how you want to live it. And importantly, then you can lead as a conscious leader. And for me, that's what my purpose, my passion is, to ignite the flame of self-love within so that leaders can truly really build these learning organizations so that together we can make a bigger difference and connect that heart. Because in wonderful leadership, we have that connection of heart, mind to that higher calling and consciousness, whatever that is for you. And we're present. And as wonderful Jane said today, having that vulnerability to look at ourselves, look beyond ourselves, and challenge ourselves in what we think, how we act. And this is the beautiful opportunity, which is always the Leadership Heart podcast. And if you want to, again, learn more, you know how to get a hold of Jane. If you want to learn more about, on my end, with the emotional intelligence assessments, where it really helps you unlock the hidden areas of yourself, the how and the why of how emotions are showing up, their impact on you. And so reach out. I'd love to get together, connect, can't talk. It's been a long day, but thank you so much, everyone. And until next week, we will have another amazing, exceptional guest to fulfill and give your heart that beautiful ignition so that you can live, learn, and lead fully. Thanks, everyone. We'll talk to you soon. And Jane, I'll put you down below and we'll be right back to you in a second. Thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Sandra. Bye.
Bye-bye.